The moment Eleanor Drake saw the girl's necklace, the air seemed to vanish from the room. 1 second she was lifting her glass of wine. The next she was frozen, her eyes locked on the gold pendant resting just below Mara's collarbone, a delicate crescent moon, etched with a single letter S beside her. 16-year-old Ethan Drake smiled with pride, introducing the guest he had brought home. "Mom, Dad, this is Mara." Mara offered a gentle smile, her voice calm despite the tension thickening around the table. "It's so nice to meet you." Mrs. Drake Lina didn't answer, her gaze never leaving the necklace at the head of the table. Daniel Drake cleared his throat. "And how did you two meet?" "At the Westbrook shelter," Ethan replied quickly. "She teaches coding to younger kids." "That's where I volunteered." "That's incredible," Daniel murmured, forcing a polite smile. Eleanor finally blinked, setting her glass down without taking a sip. "Excuse me," she said, her voice suddenly cold and brittle. "I'll be back in a moment." She rose stiffly, leaving the dining room, one hand reaching to her own chest, not for composure, but for the hidden chain beneath her blouse. Something was very wrong. She didn't stop until she reached the master bedroom, shutting the door, locking it, and opening the antique jewelry box with trembling hands. Beneath pearls and diamonds lay a necklace almost identical to Mara's, a gold crescent moon, engraved with the same single letter. As she hadn't seen that symbol in nearly 20 years. Back at the table, the air was still tense. Mara sipped water quietly, while Ethan tried to fill the silence. "She's into AI and robotics too, Mom. She's even applying to Northfield University." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "That's impressive." Mara nodded. "I've always loved solving puzzles." Daniel's eyes flickered to her necklace again. "That's a beautiful piece, family heirloom." Mara glanced down. "Not really. I don't know where it came from." "You don't?" "I grew up in foster care. It's the only thing I had when they found me as a baby." The room went still. Daniel's gaze shifted toward the empty doorway where Eleanor had vanished. Mara didn't notice, her fingers brushing the gold charm, unaware it had just unlocked a door no one in that house ever wanted to open again. Eleanor stood at the bathroom sink, running cold water over her wrists, her breath shaky and uneven. She hadn't thought about that night in years. The storm, the shouting, the choice they swore never to speak of again. Now this girl shows up wearing that necklace. She gripped the counter, fighting to steady herself downstairs. Ethan was oblivious, too focused on Mara's quiet laughers. She told a story about a student in her coding class who accidentally made a robot spin in circles until they had to unplug the whole system. Daniel chuckled faintly, but his mind was racing. He had seen that necklace before in a hospital, wrapped inside a blood-stained blanket. Then footsteps echoed in the hallway. Eleanor returned to the table, calm and cold as porcelain. She sat down with a tight smile. "Sorry, just had to check a message. Everything okay?" Ethan asked. "Of course," she replied, then turned to Mara with a flat tone. "Have you ever tried to trace your birth parents?" Mara's face fell. She hesitated. "I used to," she whispered, "but I stopped when someone warned me to let it go." The silence was so heavy Ethan could feel it pressing against his ribs. "Someone warned you?" he repeated, leaning closer. Mara nodded. "Yeah. About 3 years ago I filed a request for non-identifying records, and the next week I got a typed note in the mail. No return address, just one sentence." "What did it say?" Daniel asked, his voice low. Glanced between them. "It said, stop digging. Some graves are sealed for a reason." Eleanor's knuckles tightened around her wineglass. "And you just stopped?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "I was 15. It scared me. Figured maybe my parents were dangerous or powerful, so I let it." Gamora looked away, embarrassed. "I just told myself the past didn't matter." Ethan reached for her hand under the table. "It matters," he said. Daniel cleared his throat. "You said the necklace came with you as a baby. Do you still have any of the paperwork from the system?" Mara blinked. "Only a copy." "Why? Would you let us see it?" he asked quickly. Eleanor shot him a sharp look, but Mara just shrugged. "Sure. It's at my apartment. I want to see it tonight." Eleanor's voice cut the air. And half an hour later, Ethan pulled up outside Mara's small apartment. A quiet, the street in the east side of Brookfield. The contrast was sharp from their high ceilings and glass walls to her creaky floors and modest rooms. Eleanor and Daniel had insisted on coming. Eleanor said she wanted clarity. Daniel hadn't said a word. Mara apologized for the mess, though the place was spotless. Books stacked neatly, a small potted plant on the windowsill, and an old laptop charging on a desk made from stacked crates. "Sits in here," she said, pulling a slim manila folder from a fireproof box under her bed. "It's not much, just intake notes and a faded medical report." She handed it to Eleanor, who opened it with trembling fingers. The top page was a hospital report. "Female, infant, mixed race, approximately 5 days old. Found abandoned near the Westbrook shelter. Wearing crescent moon necklace. No injuries, no witnesses." Eleanor's breath caught. Beneath it was a social worker's note dated 2006. "Infant appeared healthy and caller reported location." Voice female, mid-30s, possibly educated, refused to give a name. Said, "She's safer without me." Daniel stepped back as if struck. Eleanor sank slowly onto the edge of Mara's couch, her eyes unblinking. "Go, my God," she whispered. "It was you." Ethan looked between them, confused. "Wait, what do you mean, Mom?" What's going on? Eleanor didn't answer her. Eyes were locked on the folder in her lap as if it had dragged a ghost out of her chest. Mara stood frozen, one hand gripping the side of her desk. You recognize this, don't you? Daniel asked quietly. He wasn't looking at Mara. Daniel was staring at his wife. Eleanor finally spoke, her voice low and unsteady. That necklace. It's not just similar, it's the same. I had one made years ago. Before. She stopped. Before what? Ethan asked, panic tightening in his throat. Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. Before the baby. Mara's lips parted in shock. What baby? Eleanor stood too quickly. This isn't the time. This isn't the place. Mara stepped back, her voice trembling. I think I have the right to know. Eleanor turned to her son Ethan. She may be your sister. The silence was heavy, merciless. No, Mara whispered, stepping back as if struck. That's not possible. But Eleanor didn't deny it. Daniel sat down, burying his face in his hands. Ethan stood frozen, the room tilting around him. He said again, louder this time, that can't be right. That's insane. Mara moved to the corner of the room, arms crossed tight over her chest. Her eyes shone with tears, but she refused to let them fall. Eleanor's silence said everything. Her face looked as if it had aged 10 years in 5 minutes. I was 20, she said finally, in college, not married, not ready. My parents threatened to cut me off if I kept the baby, so I made the worst decision of my life. She looked at Mara now. They told me you'd be adopted. I didn't know where you ended up, but I couldn't stand the thought of you having nothing. So I left the necklace. It was all I had. You abandoned me. Mara's voice was ice. I hated myself every day for it, Eleanor said quietly. Ethan turned to his mother. And you never told me. Daniel's voice was brittle. I found out 2 years after we married. She told me in tears. I promised never to bring it up again. But she's not your daughter, Eleanor whispered to him. She's mine, but not ours. And Daniel asked what no one else dared to. Are you sure? The next morning was silent. Mara hadn't slept. She sat on her bed, knees drawn to her chest, clutching the necklace she once thought was just a pretty charm. Her world had turned upside down in a single night. She didn't know who to trust, least of all herself. Knock at the door. Startled, hurt, was Ethan. Alone. He looked like he hadn't slept either. He handed her a small envelope, a private DNA lab. He said, come to you. No records, no publicity, no drama. Mara stared at the envelope, but didn't take it. To still think I might be your sister? She asked softly. I don't know what to think, he admitted, but I know I want the truth. Whatever it is. She took the envelope at last back at the Drake penthouse. Eleanor sat at the dining table in silence. Daniel paced with his phone in hand. It hates me, Eleanor whispered. I saw it in her eyes. She's allowed to, Daniel replied, but that doesn't mean this ends in hate. A few hours later, the DNA technician came and went. 3 days passed. Then a single email appeared in Mara's inbox. She opened it slowly, her heart pounding. 99.9% probability of a direct maternal relationship to Eleanor Drakend. Below that, no paternal match to Daniel Drake. Eleanor stood alone on the rooftop garden of Drake Tower, holding the original necklace she had hidden for almost 20 years. The DNA results had only confirmed what she already knew deep down, but the fact that Daniel wasn't the father changed everything. I failed her twice, she whispered, once when I let her go, and again when I saw her and felt nothing but shame behind her. Mara appeared quietly. Wanted to meet? She asked gently. So I came. Eleanor turned, her voice cracking. Thank you. They sat together on a bench beneath a glass awning, the city humming softly below. I wasn't going to come, Mara admitted, but I remembered what you asked me the first night about the necklace, and you asked if I'd ever searched for my parents' eyes. Used to want answers. Now I think I just want peace. Eleanor reached into her coat pocket. She handed Mara a small velvet box. Inside was the twin necklace I had to made. She said softly, one for me and one for the baby I thought I'd never see again. Mara looked at it, then at Eleanor. I don't need this to know who I am, she whispered, but I'll wear it to remember who you chose to become. 3 months later, the Drake Foundation quietly announced a new scholarship program for young women in foster care pursuing tech education. It bore no family name. It was called the Mara Sloan Initiative. At the official launch, Eleanor stood beside Mara, not as a benefactor, but as a mother trying to show up in a way she never had before. Ethan spoke at the podium. She's not my sister by blood, he said, but I'd be proud if she was. The room went silent, then broke into applause. Lit that day, in a quiet corner of the Foundation's mentorship wing, Mara knelt beside a shy 12-year-old girl, helping her troubleshoot a stubborn circuit board from the hallway. Eleanor watched. Her eyes were wet, but steady. Daniel stood next to her. She's not your mistake, he said quietly. She's your miracle. Eleanor didn't answer. She didn't have to. Mara now wore both necklaces, the one she had always carried, and the one Eleanor had saved in art as symbols of pain, but as a bridge between past and future. She hadn't just found a family, she had redefined one. Sometimes the most powerful bonds aren't the ones we're born into, but the ones we choose to fight for. If this story touched you, share it with someone who believes healing is possible. Subscribe for more stories that remind us love isn't about blood, it's about who shows up.